Don't you hate pants?
Welcome to Giles and the Goalies podcast. Yeah, this is just a weird episode, I guess, if you will, or sad episode. I don't know how to describe it, but it's always sad when the season ends. So I guess we're gonna kind of battle through it. But
yeah, I mean, I'm sad, sure. You know, it's hard not to be, but on the other hand, I feel a little bit of relief too, as you probably do. I mean, it's a little different for us as people who slave away, umpteen hours a week, dissecting and writing about this team. But on the other hand, I think there's probably a lot of fans out there that feel the same way because, I mean, it was a trying season to say the least. So.
At the end, I'm sure I'm not the only one who was in Game 5 just put the gun to my head and pull the trigger, and they didn't, and then that happened in Game 6.
Yeah.
So they carried it out for one more game just to mess with you.
It wouldn't be a Minnesota sports team without them twisting the knife, right? I mean, that's just not possible. You can't just have... Has a Minnesota sports team ever been... I mean, I guess except for 41 Donut, I suppose. But, and all those years that the Twins got smoked by the Yankees. Even though it was... I mean,
that's painful.
You knew it was coming, so it wasn't as bad. But this is just like... it's just that extra little twist, and it's just like they had a chance, and they shouldn't have. I mean, they had a chance because Dallas is about as flawed as a playoff team comes, Wild included. But they just couldn't help themselves from twisting the knife a little bit, and that's kind of the Minnesota sports MO, I guess.
Yeah.
It's probably a good thing that you're well lubricated at this point.
Yeah, you're probably right. We're gonna jump right into it here. Last time we convened, the Wild were down 2-0, and it didn't look good. And I think the sentiment of the last podcast was, don't expect anything, and if anything happens, that's a bonus.
Yeah. And
I think we got kind of a little bit of a bonus as... No, not John boys. But I'm too proud of myself for that. But, I guess I expected them to be done in 5, and we were 5 minutes away from that.
Yeah.
And obviously they played well in Game 3, and they had a huge effort from their veteran leaders who kind of needed a boot in the rear.
Right.
from the head coach, which they got.
Yeah.
That's why they won Game 3. Is they had a boot in the rear, and they came out in Game 4 and were a little bit more flat, and just that weird puck on skate goal wins it, and that's kind of how the home games went. But
right, and that's the worst part about this series is, and we didn't see this coming necessarily. I figured they'd show up for a couple of games, and to their credit, they did. I think they showed up for Game 3. Obviously, they kind of dominated that game. Outside of the first 5 minutes. And Game 4, I don't think they dominated, but I think they've showed up for that game. They played a pretty solid game. Game 5, obviously, I think they played pretty well as well, especially towards the end. And Game 6, they didn't show up until the third period, but that was an incredible third period. So, when you average it all out, maybe it adds up to 2 games that they showed up for.
Wow.
Maybe they got 120 minutes of showing up for games in there.
I mean, I'll say Game 5, yeah, sure, whatever.
Don't have so much conviction.
Game 3 was a couple periods, and Game 4, I thought they played fairly well for the most part.
Yeah,
just all around they just had a bad bounce.
Yeah.
Game 5, they were just so unbelievably dominated, but yet they still found a way to win.
Yeah.
And I feel like that caught up to them in Game 6. And
yeah.
You're down 4-0 at the end of the second. Certain fans are leaving the game because
why wouldn't you at that point?
They think it's over. And then you just kind of turn it on. You're like, oh, we're not done yet.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that would have been nice even a period ago. But
and the real pain is that 3 games in this series were decided on fluky goals. I mean, essentially, you've got the Roussel goal in Game 2, which, we still don't know how that was considered a good hockey goal, but whatever, things happen. And then Game 4, as you mentioned, ends with a puck off a skate, which, no controversy there. It was a goal. I mean, there was no, distinct kicking motion, yada, yada, yada. But it's still a freaking puck off a skate that decides the game. And then in Game 6, you have a goal that, you have the game-winning goal for the Stars that tips, 15, 20 feet in the air and falls behind Devin Dubnyk, and he ends up getting, kicked, or he kind of falls on it and then pushes it in, and Coyle kind of pushes a little bit, and, whatever, total fluke goal, and then the game, the goal at the end that never was, that somehow hit Letnin's pad inside the net and wasn't considered a goal, but that was a goal. It was a goal, but
I'm sorry.
It was a goal. But you know what? I totally understand why it wasn't called a goal, because you have a camera in the crosspipe, and you can't see the way the puck is sitting. But when you think about it, the puck is up on end, and you can see the base of it isn't on the red line. So unless that puck is shaped like a freaking door stopper, there's no way the puck is still touching the goal line. So that's a goal. But they can't see that. They can't definitively prove that with an overhead camera. So, yeah, they're not going to call it a goal. And we've seen it before, but it happened in the Wild earlier this season. There was a huge argument about it. Well, you don't see white between the puck and the red line. Well, no, you don't, because the puck's up on end. But you can tell the puck's up on end. You're not looking down at a perfect circle, so the puck's up on end. And if the puck's up on end, it's not touching the red line anymore if the part that is in the white. It's simple, geometry.
Just to me, it did look like the puck, just even flat, just was across the line. And
yeah,
I guess I was celebrating a tying goal, and
right.
I guess maybe that was my fault. I took it as such, and it's like, oh, this game's tied now. Look out, here we come, and I don't know. They showed the first replay, and it was just like, that's a goal. looked at my cousin and I said, as much as I think that's a goal, they're just going to find a way to make this not a goal.
Yep. I tweeted that right away. I said, "This is a goal, but there's no way they can overturn it. There's just no way." They, like I said, they have a camera in the crossbar looking down. There's no way they can prove that puck was up on end and therefore over the line. But the fact that they couldn't review Demers putting his hand on the puck is also kind of BS. I understand that's maybe not a slippery slope they want to get into, but if they're looking at that replay, they can't tell anyway that he had his hand on the puck in the crease. Like, that just seems to me like you're already looking at that exact same shot. You wouldn't even have to change cameras to see if he did that. I don't understand why that's not reviewable at all, because obviously a penalty shot in that situation would have been kind of important. Granted, whoever it was would have missed, and it would have lived on in Minnesota sports lore also, but that's just... I would have been able to deal with that a little bit better than a botched review like that.
What they need to review is Demers' blatant dive in the first period.
That was so bad.
What?
Oh my God.
A damn Oscar nomination he should get for that.
It was so bad. It was so obvious.
Obviously, it didn't lead to anything. It led to a 5-on-3 that Dallas scored on. Yeah. That was their first, and then it just was downhill from there. But come on. Oh, my God. That was such a blatant dive.
On one hand, I'd like to see the NHL fine him. On the other hand, that would just send so many people off the deep end that it's like, you know what? As the series is over... Nothing's played in a vacuum, blah, blah, blah. Just, whatever. Just, keep that in your back pocket for next season when you see him, and make sure next season that he gets an elbow that he can't fake.
Yeah.
Is that too harsh?
I saw it, I was watching it live, and that's a dive, and then you just look at it on the big screen, and it's just, that's even more of a dive. It couldn't have been more blatantly obvious that he was trying to sell it, and he apparently sold it good to the referee, because it led to the penalty and the subsequent next penalty, and then the goal, and it was all downhill from there, and you can't have 5-on-3s against the Stars. No. And I think I saw you tweet something to the effect that, you can't give them 5-on-3s because they'll score. Yep. Something like that.
No, it's almost exactly. I was like, that's what happens when you give them 5-on-3s. That team has way too much offensive talent, and they move the puck way too well. They're way too fast. They're not like a stationary, pass the puck power play like the Wild are. They get a 5-and-3. That's a lot of space to work with for a lot of talented players. So it's like exponentially more dangerous for the Stars to get a 5-on-3 than the infamous Wild power play getting a 5-on-3, for instance.
The Wild could have a 5-on-1 and they may not score, let's be honest. But
I don't disagree.
Yeah, it's just... Game 6, obviously, fresh in our minds. We're recording right after, and it's just... I don't know,
luckily we have beer.
Just trying to go back and think, to what were the reactions after Game 3, Game 4, etc. Because we didn't record after each of those games. I'm just going back. Game 3, big step up from the leaders.
Yeah.
As Torch kind of got in their face and said, hey, I need more from you. And we saw a couple goals out of Pominville, goal out of Koivu to lead the way. And you kind of had this good feeling going into Game 4. And while they're up 2-1, more than halfway through, and then they kind of let that one slip away and lost. And then they just have a ridiculous Game 5 where they played back and forth, and somehow they managed to win Game 5 where they were down, by a goal with 5 minutes left. And Koivu scores a goal where, I would never expect him to be, and then he scores in overtime. And that was credit to him. That was good on him.
Yeah. Well, and that was, just kind of quickly reviewing all the games. It was kind of a roller coaster. You went up and down. Game 3, you go into it with pretty low expectations. You think, oh yeah, they'll win. They'll get their, they'll get their token win at home. They'll grit one out. And then they basically dominate the Stars. I mean, the Stars were held to 17 shots, which is their lowest total of the season. And afterwards, you're thinking like, oh, damn, this team showed up. This team is here to play in this series now. And we're sort of right, I guess. But so you're riding a lot of euphoria there. You think that, hey, they win Game 4 at home. They get a little lucky hop here, a little bounce there, maybe, or they played the same game they played in Game 3, and you got a tied series. You got a series. Then that didn't happen. Then they get the puck off the skate, and then it's 3-1, and that's when it's 3-1. It's basically inevitable at that point. So, you get a lot of doom and gloom. I wrote a doom and gloom article before Friday's game. It's basically saying, if they lose, not the worst thing in the world. You got to look big picture. You got to look at the changes this team needs to make, and let's get this over with and get started on arguably the most important summer of this franchise's existence. Then they win Game 5, and it's just like, I was not even joking. I was like borderline kind of mad about it. I was like, why? Wow. I had no faith in them winning the series.
Yeah. I was also mad,
I wasn't cheering against them per se, and I wrote it in my article. It's like, I don't want them to lose, but at the same time, I was kind of like looking forward to them losing and starting this offseason that's so important, and not playing the whole, well, we played right with the Stars card, we had a good series. Like, no, I don't care. It doesn't matter. That's not going to fix what's wrong with this team. So they win Game 5, and then, it's like, well, crap. Now we actually do have kind of a chance in this series. We're going home for Game 6. We've only lost one Game 6 in franchise history. That's off of a fluke stanchion goal. And now we go back and we play Game 6 and we lose because of a own goal that was flipped 20 feet in the air through the zone. So it just you can't win, and apparently they either win Game 6s or they lose on fluky, terrible goals.
Shit.
I'm not even going to bother bleeping that.
Game 5 was great. They came from behind late and won in overtime, but at the same time, it just to me, and I think I said this to you in a message, I was just like, I'm ready for this to be over.
Yeah.
If they lose, whatever, and
then
they didn't. They messed up my preparation montage for this podcast, and they had to make me work for another day, and that was I think I tweeted this at the second intermission, that's just how this team is they make you feel like crap, but then they just build your hopes up late just to crush them again. And that's how this game was tonight. That's how Game 6 was they're down 4-0 after 2 periods. You're literally just sitting there thinking, we have no chance.
Right.
Not at all. And then all of a sudden they come out very quickly. They get a pair of goals, and then in the next couple minutes they get another goal, And then they make you feel good about it. They're like, yeah, we're gonna go. We're gonna tie this up. We're gonna go to overtime, or we're gonna score again. We're gonna send it to Game 7, and that's not how it went at all. And unfortunately, it was just a very Minnesota-esque kind of way to
this game was,
to lose it.
Yeah, and this game was peak Minnesota sports. I mean, you couldn't. I don't want to say that it was
set on a tee.
Yeah, I don't want to say that like it's the most Minnesota sports game ending, because I'm sure there's been worse. We all know the famous ones, but just the roller coaster that was this game. I mean, you could not get any lower than Wild fans at the end of the second period. You couldn't. There's no way. You're down 4-0 going into the third period. The odds of any kind of comeback are astronomical. And then next thing you know, it's 4-3. And, I mean, Prince is playing. The crowd is absolutely deafening. Then Fluke own goal. And then, Palmer scores, and then, you get the cluster on the net, the hand on the, it just, the puck actually in the net, and you couldn't write it up. You couldn't write it up any worse. I mean, when it boils down to it, any worse than that, for Wild fans, is really what it boils down to.
I'd argue that before the third period, the best part of the game was the Prince tribute.
Yeah, it was. It really was.
As sad as that is, that we had to have a Prince tribute to make the game tolerable,
palatable.
Yeah, that's things.
You're not wrong,
and we'll get into that later. And you kind of got that idea of Prince in our intro, I guess. Yeah. But we'll get into that later. But.
Do you have any other thoughts from Game 6, or is it?
Well,
do you remember a whole lot of it?
I remember. I remember. It's just you're down 4-0, and you're just thinking this isn't gonna work, and the third period starts, and you just start racking off goals, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh man, here they come, and they get to within one, and they just give up the most Minnesota goal that ever was. A deflected puck that Dubnyk just doesn't see, and it just finds its way into the net, and it's just that's it. That's the deciding goal in this series, and
no, and that kind of sums it up, and that's going to be my article either tomorrow or the next day. Is that goal really kind of typified, not just this game, not just this postseason, but this entire campaign for the Wild. This entire season is summed up on that goal, and just how. Russo even tweeted it. Russo said that goal is just totally Dubnyk this year. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't believe in luck in sports, but you have to. I mean, the puck's rubber. It's round. You're playing on ice. There's definitely a lot of luck involved. And, not to say that Dubnyk played phenomenally this year and deserved much better. He definitely had his ups and downs. I mean, we saw it. We saw him dominant for a month. We saw him terrible for a month. And I think in this playoff series, he was, somewhere in the middle, actually. I mean, I don't think he was dominant, but he definitely made a lot of saves that kept this team in some games. But that kind of bounce, that kind of fluky tip shot that something goes 20 feet in the air and he loses sight of it to result in that just sums it up. I mean, it kind of, as unfortunate as it is for Wild fans, that goal, literally and figuratively puts a bow on this season. I mean, that's just the sad truth of it, really.
That was it. And I guess we'll kind of hit on it with that last controversial non-goal.
Yeah.
which could have tied it. I guess you just kind of thought that, yeah, maybe that's a goal. But, obviously nothing was ever conclusive.
No.
I don't remember who shot that, but to me it just looked like...
I think it was Nino.
That was a goal, and this is a tie game, and euphoria.
Yeah.
Somehow they've tied this game, and nope, that was never the case, and they just kind of quietly dispatched that notion, and...
Yeah. And then you knew after that they weren't scoring. It's just that's how the script in sports goes every time. You have a goal like that, you have a call like that. Not only the goal over the line against his pad, but also the Demers' hand on the puck. You don't get either one of those calls. And there's, I think at that point there's like 20 seconds left in the game or something like that. You know that they're not going to score after that. I mean, that's just, when does that ever happen? When is a wrong like that ever righted from the sports guides? It's just not. And that's just, so as soon as that challenge was lost, it was just... this just emptying feeling where it's just like, well, that was our shot. That was, you don't get a whole lot of shots, and as porous as Dallas is defensively, you're not going to get another chance like that. And especially with the famed pass, maybe shoot offense of the Minnesota Wild with the extra man, that's just kind of the reality of it.
Yeah.
I don't know if the mic caught that sigh, but that was
a deep sigh.
That was peak Giles sigh right there.
Deep sigh.
That's how the day is gone. Maybe we shouldn't have podcasted immediately after the game. I don't know. Just kind of throwing it out there.
It's just my thing with Game 6 is, for 2 periods they were as terribly uncaring as you could have been.
Yeah.
In 2 periods, and then they kind of kicked it into gear in the third, and it's just like, why did it need 2 periods for you to get it together? Like, here you are at home, you have a chance to tie the series, and you just have the most lackluster effort through 2 periods. And then finally in the third, you turn it around after you're down 4-0, but...
Right. And I saw a lot of people come to the defense of the Wild. Our friend Bonus tweeted out, you can't really question their resilience anymore. And yeah, I mean, that's something you can give them, but also our friend Tony from Hockey Wilderness tweeted that you can't question their heart. And I don't know, I think you can. I think that a team with heart doesn't come out of the gate like that. And, not to rail against that, I think you can argue it either way, but I think that this game, and really by extension, this whole series, really kind of raised more questions than answers. I mean,
this season.
Right, well, exactly. But, I mean, this series, you kind of hope that you would maybe get some answers, like, are they good enough? Can they play with a team like this in 7 games? And, I mean, it did not answer any of those questions. Did they play with this team that was, won the division? Yeah, they did at times. But they didn't, even in Game 3, it wasn't a 60-minute game for them. Patrick Sharp scored 2 goals in 5 minutes, like Duncan Keith's wife was in the stands or something, and they couldn't even muster any effort in the first 10 minutes of that game. So you don't get a clear picture of this team playing its game for 60 minutes at any point during this playoff series. And it just, like I said, it creates more questions than it does answers. We still have no idea what this team actually is. And I don't know that we're going to.
And that's the thing. I think we have talked about this at great length on the podcast here during the year. I've tried to put my finger on this team, and I never, ever have, and I still haven't. The season has ended, and I still have not quite been able to put my finger on this team, and
could you?
That's exactly it.
Could you imagine we're 88 games in, and this team still doesn't have an identity. It doesn't have an identity. I mean, that's, and maybe that's something that's horribly overrated. And I'm sure anybody who studies statistics is going to tell me that doesn't matter. But, I think it's kind of important just for the general mood of this team, because I don't think they ever found an identity. And I think that as cliched and as played out as that might be, I think that having an identity to a team really galvanizes a team. And this team is probably the least galvanized professional sports club that I've ever encountered. I mean, obviously there's recency bias, and the fact that this is one of the only teams I've ever covered, that probably doesn't help either. But, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that I'm way off on that. Just hearing what you hear, it sounds like this team is so polarized, and that explains why they're so bipolar. I mean, there's nothing that we know about this team. There's nothing that united this team. There's nothing that, stuck this team together. There's no glue to this team. As much as Mikko Koivu is respected as a captain by the younger players, you can tell the younger players respect him, he's not a glue to this team.
Well,
and from what it sounds like, neither are any of the other veterans. Because Parise and Suter and Pominville, from what we've heard, they kind of do their own thing. They're not the glue. So this team doesn't have any glue.
Well, and just kind of touching on the leadership. Koivu, who was reportedly challenged by John Torchetti before Game 3, had a very good Game 3 and had a great Game 5 where he won the game himself.
Can't beat a tying goal and a game-winning goal in overtime. And Pominville, I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure Pominville led the team in points in this series.
I believe because
I know he was when he went into the game and he scored.
I know going in. Yeah. So, because he had a big Game 3 and Game 4. And,
yep. And he scores again tonight, so it's...
Torch kind of lit a fire under some veterans that needed to be, pushed, but the team as a whole wasn't pushed in the way they needed to be.
Yep.
And, obviously, I can respect Torch when he pushes a Koivu and a Pominville who haven't had maybe good postseasons the last couple of years, but you're trying to get everything out of a team in a postseason series, like we saw that.
So do you think he should have focused more on team unity than just calling out some veterans? Or?
And maybe he should have
called out some younger players, maybe? I don't know.
And maybe he should have put more emphasis on defense, because really, as I kind of summed up in the Wild Extra postseason preview on defense, that the Wild had a really good defensive pair in Ryan Suter and Jared Spurgeon, but behind that, they really had very inconsistent efforts all year from whoever it was.
Yeah.
And Jonas Brodin, Marco Scandella, Matt Dumba, Mike Riley, Nate Prosser, etc., and it was really just kind of a mixed bag of what you were going to get, and that was really my big concern. That's why I said Dallas has the edge on defense, because the Wild haven't given a great effort beyond that first pair all year.
Yeah.
And we kind of saw that here in the series.
I think Spurgeon had a great series. He scored a couple of times today, and you can see him. But then, like you said, Nate Prosser. Prosser had a brutal series. I mean, he just got eaten alive, which you kind of saw coming.
Well, I will say he wasn't terrible, but then his minutes got increased.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't terrible, and then he really got exposed because when you're getting second pair minutes, you're gonna get exposed somehow. And don't get me wrong, I think there's some kind of place for Nate Prosser as a sixth defenseman, but when you're giving him second pair minutes, something is clearly wrong, and that was made very evident in this series.
Yeah, and Dumba, kind of more or less necessitated that. I mean, and I don't know, it just seemed like you didn't really hear from Brodin or Scandella much. I mean, beyond, obviously Suter playing a boatload of minutes and Spurgeon having a heck of a series like you kind of expect him to. Wasn't much going on back there, and it showed. They allowed a lot of goals in the series, plain and simple. And, sure, some of those are on Dubnyk, and you can argue how much and how bad, but I think a lot of those goals were really ugly defensive breakdowns, too. Could Dubnyk have saved them? Yeah, sure. Of course he could have, but you don't put yourself in that situation by having just atrocious, defensive breakdowns. If you're a defensive team like the Wild facing against a very dangerous team like the Stars, you just can't have defensive breakdowns like that and, expect your goalie to bail you out every time, because Dubnyk did bail them out a number of times, but he's not going to bail you out every time. So, I don't know. I'm hesitant to put this entirely on one facet of the team. I think the offense was, very streaky, and that worked against them. They obviously had full-on periods where they were unstoppable, and they had periods where they were non-existent. I think the defense was the same way, and kind of in conjunction together. And I think Dubnyk as good as he looked at times, there were some saves that he needed to make. They were hard saves. His defense didn't do him any favors, but there was definitely some saves he needed to make. So I'm not ready to pin a scapegoat on this series, because I just don't think there's a scapegoat to be had, to be completely honest. And I understand a lot of people are going to want to find a scapegoat, and it's easy to point it at Dubnyk, or it's easy to point it at any of the defensemen basically, or it's easy to point it at Zucker not doing anything or whatever, or Coyle not really doing much besides the beautiful goal. But I mean, if there ever was one, I mean, this just was a lackluster team effort across the board. It just was too many mistakes, not enough offensive execution, and I mean, really, when you boil it down between goals that he should have had and goals that he definitely stopped, I think it was average goaltending. So, I mean, you have average goaltending, mistake-prone defense, and a very, very inconsistent offense. You're not going to win a whole lot of playoff series, and I think that's just is what it is. That's where we're at.
You hit it on the head there, that it was just a very inconsistent effort all around, and I'm not ready to pin this on Dubnyk. He had some soft goals in this series, and as I've said all year, his playing time has been a concern, but when you're playing the Dallas Stars, you have to be very tight defensively, and at times they weren't, and it cost them. It's just it's frustrating. It's just, you know how well this team can play. They can play with the best of them, and just times they haven't, and yeah.
That kind of sums it up. You just
take a deep breath and think, that was just this team's undermining factor this year, is they haven't really been able to play like the way they have, and that goes back to the Mike Yeo days this season, and even when he said things were going right seemingly, they were like 9-3-2 in December, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they're exactly.
Nothing ever felt right.
Right.
This team never felt like they were clicking on all cylinders, and you can go back to those podcasts we had. You can feel like they could still be doing better. That's what we said. They could be better in certain areas, and that's just how it's been all year. They've never ever clicked as a whole for any certain length of time, and that's what came out this series was, they had certain spurts of good play. They never had significant lengths of good play to get them anywhere.
Well, and with them, we go into this series saying, or me specifically, I said they'd show up for 2 games, and then as we talked about it earlier, it wasn't even that, because like I said, they didn't even show up for game 3 for the first 10 minutes. They didn't show up for game 6 for the first 40 minutes, et cetera, et cetera. You didn't even know what team you were getting each intermission. You didn't even know what team was coming out of the locker room. You had no idea. It wasn't just like, they played really good this game. No, you literally had to break it down period by period with this team, and to really kind of get a feel for the effort that they were giving. And then, not effort in that, they were skating hard or whatever, but execution, really. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Execution, especially offensively. That's what offense is about. It's about execution. And there was some periods where they just did not have it at all. I mean, they could skate hard all they want, but they couldn't connect a pass to save their life. They're playing hand grenade hockey. And you didn't know it, even if they did that, they played horribly, which they did for the first 2 periods today. We kind of assumed it would be the same team coming out for the third period, and then it wasn't. Then it was a completely different team that came out for the third period. For the better, but that doesn't make you feel any better about it because it's not consistent at all. And that just, like I said, it typifies the whole season. It kind of sums it up, puts a bow on it, and says, yep, they're 2015-16 Wild. Inconsistent.
In essence, Game 6 was the season in a nutshell.
Yeah, it really was.
2 very bad periods, followed up by an insanely good third period to just try to save face.
And then coming up short in the end. Well, should we... have we bantered about this enough? Should we move on to more macro things, or what do you want to talk about now? What do you want to ramble about now?
I mean, obviously we've kind of rambled on about Game 6 enough, and I don't know, maybe not more so the goal that was, but that's kind of a moot point.
Yeah.
But I guess, also in the past week that, there's kind of been some more significant news in the fact that Chuck Fletcher is coming back next year by all accords.
That's what we're told.
Yeah. I mean, that's coming straight from the owner, Craig Leopold, so right. I would take that a little more for what it's worth, but
they always call it the dreaded vote of confidence, and Mike Yeo even got the dreaded vote of confidence 2 whole days, 48 hours before he was fired. But in this instance, with Leopold's history in Nashville, as you've mentioned numerous times, he had 1 GM and 1 head coach, and I think it pained him very deeply to fire Mike Yeo, even though that was probably more or less Fletcher's call. But I think that the guy is loyal, and obviously at this point, you can definitely make the argument loyal to a fault. So I don't know. As a friend of the podcast, Tom Schreier, would say, he's looking for patient Tom himself is looking forward to Fletcher getting a stab at fixing his mistakes. But there's a lot of people who rightfully so don't want to see him get the chance because he's about to make his third head coaching hire. Assuming that it's not as easy as bringing back John Torchetti, which we can totally dive into later. But I don't know. It's to me, it's kind of half a dozen in one hand, six in the other. Where it's like, I don't know. Will a new GM fix this team? I don't. I mean, you trust him to make another hire, and then what if the hire is worse? What if he hires Riseborough 2.0? I mean, that's.
I think I said this on previous podcasts. Was say you can Fletcher and you bring in somebody new. You're probably not going to have a lot of player movement this year.
Well, maybe not. It depends on the GM.
Because you have a new guy who's just trying to come in and evaluate things. We saw this with Peter Chiarelli in Edmonton, like this year, for example. He came in, he did not want to trade anyone right away, even though
it was very tempting.
It was very the writing was very much on the wall. He had to trade people. He wanted to take a year. He wanted to evaluate what he had. And he didn't. But when he got to the end of the year, it was like, okay,
sure,
there are a lot of things wrong. I got to start moving people.
Yeah.
That's what I think would have happened with the Wild is you would have had another roller coaster season with a new GM who had no friendships, no anything with anyone else in the league. And you just would have gotten the same team, same result, same whatever. Yeah. Whereas you have Chuck Fletcher here for at least another year. He's going to be here and he's going to try and shake things up. He's going to try and move some pieces. He's going to try and make this better. That's what I guess. That's what makes this team a little more enticing for next year is Chuck Fletcher's coming back. He's going to try and fix the problem, whereas another GM would have just tried to evaluate. We're going to see some moves. Yeah. At least I think there are some moves to be had out there. And
no, I would definitely agree with that. I think this is going to be a very busy summer. At least I hope it's going to be a very busy summer because, as I mentioned in my article on Friday, this team is broken. This team is flawed. There's lots of problems with this team, and it goes a lot further than the stat sheet. So there's definitely a shake-up in order. So, maybe Fletcher is the most likely GM to do said shakeup. But, look at Sweeney coming into Boston. He shook things up pretty significantly, too. A little more selling than anything, but maybe we see something like that if new GM were to come in. I don't know. I don't know that this team's in really a position like that because they're so locked into place as far as contracts go, and the only people they can move are the guys basically under 27, and those are the guys you don't want to move, but they're the only ones that you can move to shake things up. So it's really kind of a nightmare. It's really a general managing nightmare, and there's definitely two sides to this coin. I totally get all of the fire Fletcher folks. I 100% understand where you're coming from. He's made a lot of moves that his overall body of work, probably deserves him to get fired. But, the people who want to be more patient and give him another shot, as unpopular as that is obviously going to be, I don't know that it's the worst option. I think that giving him another season and a summer to do with his team, pending the moves, obviously, we'll see what we think about the moves when he makes them. But there could be some, I think you're right. I think there's moves to be had out there. I think that there's possibilities to improve this team that Chuck Fletcher could pull off.
You mentioned, it's going to be more of the youngins that are going to get moved, and which is a fair assessment. And really, I don't see any of the veterans getting moved this summer. So obviously, we're going to discuss on a later podcast as we go down the playoffs. What players you'd like to see get moved, but
sure,
it's just.
Prince came on and Giles had to dance.
It's just, it is terrifying a little bit that the fact that you have all these veterans locked into contracts and to no move deals that you kind of have to start moving some of these younger players. And maybe there's a couple of the younger players you should try to move, but you'd like to see the older guys get moved, but they can't. And
really not happening.
That's really a frightening factor. And like I said, we're gonna get into that in a later podcast. As
that'd be a good one for next week. We can dive into that and the Torchetti situation.
We've got plenty of things to talk about here.
Yes.
Before the playoffs end, and we're gonna be around for most of the playoffs here. As we're gonna try and continue on every week.
Yeah.
So
look forward to that.
I guess
we're not done yet. Just to preface that, but should we?
I guess we can move on to our
transition.
Our signature segment.
All right. Well,
the jerseys.
Let's hit the button.
Here's the start of the third period. What team is this? It's not Team USA. Well, yes, it is. They've got on new uniforms. They're wearing the logo of the Duck.
And we're back.
Ducks fly together.
No, that different. Oh yeah, the same one. Okay.
I'm trying to look up the jerseys on the fly here.
Yeah. So this week we decided to pick the St. Louis Blues since they're going to be eliminated tomorrow night because they cannot possibly win a freaking playoff series.
Ever try to win.
But I really like the combination of tweets that we had yesterday. You tweeted out, "Nice to see the St. Louis Blues crapping the bed again," and I quote tweeted it, and I just said "death, comma, taxes, comma," and then your tweet, "Nice to see the Blues crapping the bed again."
Well, what was funny was I was at the Minnesota United game last night, and I had no clue what was going on. I got to the bar and I saw it was 5-3 for the Blackhawks, and I'm just like, you got to be kidding me! Like, so that was literally the first thing I tweeted when I got to the bar to see the score. And
did you know that it was 3-1 Blues at one point?
No, I didn't. I actually didn't. I tweeted that I didn't know that till this morning that the Blues were actually up 3-1.
Yeah, they were.
And I know some Blues fans, I want the Blues to just close out the Blackhawks. I want them to move on, but
it's just not happening. It's just not.
Right. It's just...
Sorry.
Yeah. It's just, you got to be a realist at some point, and the fact that there's a Game 7 between the Blues and the Blackhawks is...
Yeah. Well, all you need to know. So anyway, their jerseys, despite the vast amounts of negativity that go with the on-the-ice product, I think their jerseys are, even right now, a fairly strong point, right?
They have a fairly...
I like what they got going on.
They have a fairly strong jersey history, and it's just, you kind of scroll through on our favorite website, NHLuniforms.com. You just keep going to the 70s, the 80s, and then you get into the
team that likes to tinker, but they never did a overhaul until the one you're looking at right now, the famous 90s jerseys with the red base, and even that was kind of a tinker too.
Even that was still good with the red on the road uniforms, but you never really got got annoyed with them until the Reebok Edge kicked
well,
in. And
that's kind of a theme. Should be a bingo card.
I have a Brett Hall jersey from, I think it was 1999 when he had the alternate captain on his sweater.
Yeah.
I have one of those, and those are good jerseys.
It's a beautiful jersey. I can understand people that kind of hate on the whole diagonal action that they had going on with the red. It's near and dear to our hearts because it was the 90s, but I don't think they were that terrible. Yeah, exactly. Gretzky wore that jersey. I mean, come on. Gretzky wore that jersey. I don't think that those were that bad of a look either. I certainly prefer the simpler look that they had before and that they kind of are styled after now. But, those red ones, it could have been a lot worse in the 90s, as we've definitely seen as the season has rolled along. And they managed to also very narrowly, avoid the 90s third jersey disaster. And I say narrowly because a lot of people know that story where they had quite possibly the most hideous third jersey in hockey history, and it got mothballed just before it was worn, basically, is how the story goes down.
So somehow the jersey leaked out.
Yeah.
And it's, honest to God, one of the most hideous looking things you've ever seen
bad.
in your life.
Oh my God.
And it's just basically a bunch of,
trumpets and horns just coming out of, flying out of people's asses and stuff.
The Blues basically pulled the plug on it. It never saw the light of day, but there are so many, pictures of it.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
It's out on the internet.
Yeah, you can definitely Google Blues third jersey, and it'll probably be one of the first ones to pop up, aside from that wild rip-off third jersey that they've been wearing lately. But
as we talk about that, Ring of Fire comes on by Johnny Cash at Bar Bingo.
Yeah. But yeah, that third jersey is...
They're playing Bar Bingo.
We need to plan out our Sundays a little bit better, Giles.
God.
It's all right. Next week we'll avoid it.
Well, next time you come to Reed.
Yeah. No, I could have, I guess.
There you go. Check Reed's off your bingo card.
So Blues, I think overall you got to give them a thumbs up right now.
Yeah,
they got a pretty solid look going on. The Reebok Edge, as you said, was it was piping everywhere and Reebok logos everywhere, and that was just kind of how that went. But even arguably, their weirdest design with the diagonal red, I kind of like. I like the trumpet shoulder patch. I think it was a really cool touch. I don't know why they don't use it still, but whatever. It is what it is. I do. I like their jersey history, and good luck to them tomorrow night because they're going to need it.
I think they have a solid history.
No, it's Pitbull. Somebody alert Nate Wells. I'm on airplane mode. You're going to have to tweet him.
Yeah.
Episode 52. Giles sings Pitbull.
No. No, I wholeheartedly agree that their jersey history was really good until the Reebok Edge kicked in, and I really love their third jerseys with the crest with the arch,
the loop, the arch.
I think that's a good solid jersey, and
do you? Maybe I get this feeling. Maybe just I don't know. Do you feel like that's kind of like a Wild rip-off jersey? Because the Wild came out with those reds, the one you're wearing right now, and then suddenly the Blues have a jersey with a circular logo like that, with their regular logo in the middle of it, and then the Blue Jackets did the same thing. And I don't know, and not to call the Wild trendsetters, because it's a style of jersey that's been around for a long time, dating back to, I guess, the Penguins, probably their initial jerseys, but it just feels like they were like, hey, those Wild red jerseys, those things are selling like hotcakes. This was 10 years ago and everyone still liked them. And then they come out with like basically the same exact jersey, obviously just with Blues. It's just like, well, that's nice. And that was when not many people were doing the lacing either, and they did the lacing, and I don't know, it just felt like a Wild rip-off jersey to me. So I've never really been a huge fan of it, even though I do really like them having the arch on the jersey somewhere. Any way you can incorporate that, I think is cool. Oh, whoop, there it is.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my
D2.
God.
Whoop. It is.
Yeah, if this song comes on in my truck, that we're doing no less than 77 miles an hour, and we might be swerving in and out of traffic. I just want to warn anybody who might see my Tahoe flying down the highway.
No, I don't know. I'm not opposed to the Blues jersey history, sans the Reebok edge. And, even in the Gretzky days, all 2 months of them, I am fond of them, and I do have a whole jersey from 1999. So it's
just. Because I went through here's my chain of thought. Gretzky, 96 playoffs with the Blues. That was the year of Prince's "Let's Go Crazy" as the theme song for the Stanley Cup playoffs. I lived with my grandma for a couple of months there, and that's when I first ever followed the NHL playoffs. So that means a lot to me. That just a lot of memories there. I followed every single game, every single round. Back when ESPN actually carried hockey. The goal song today was "Let's Go Crazy." First, how awesome is that? And
it should be that forever.
Exactly. How likely do you think that it is that they keep that? I hope they do. It would be such an awesome move.
I remember when the Wild switched to crowd chant.
Yeah.
And
what did they use before? I don't remember.
It was the lockout. Before that, it was just rock and roll party. Hey. Yeah, it was just basically kind of what they had with the North Stars.
Yeah, I don't
remember. But they didn't switch that until after the lockout.
Okay.
So after the lockout, they switched to crowd chant, and even then, as just an impressionable kid, I was just kind of like,
it's
just kind of a weird.
It's so generic.
I hate it.
It's like rock music. It's just canned, and nothing against the song works for what it is, and if other teams want to use their goal song, like the Islanders do, by gosh, let them have at it. But it's so generic, and there's so much freaking hair metal going on in that arena already. I don't need more hair metal. I even if it's not considered that technically, I don't care, because that's what it sounds like to me.
Honestly, you know what? I want them to keep Prince.
That would be
Let's Go Crazy.
So fantastic.
And not just because it's a very sentimental thing to do right now, but it's a very Minnesota thing to do, and it's also a very good. It's a very good goal song.
Yeah.
You play it after the goal, and
this is a conversation that Wild fans been having for a while.
1500 ESPN actually did this on air on last Friday, and they made a very good pitch. I listened, and it was good.
Yeah.
It was very worthy of, we need to get this changed, and maybe now more than ever, you should just keep it as such. And
I think you're right.
The Islanders,
they can have it. They can have crowd chant.
Gone with crowd chant too, but as the Wild, you need to go with something else. And this is your slam dunk. This is what you need to go with.
Yep.
You need to go with Prince.
Yep.
It's the Minnesotan thing to do.
Yep.
Be very Minnesotan. Don't pass up this chance.
Yeah, I think this needs to extend past the feel good of this weekend. Obviously, this weekend emotions are very high, and everyone's doing a lot of really cool things to honor Prince, who meant so much, absolutely so much to the state. But it really needs. It does. It needs to go beyond this. It needs to be. This needs to be our thing. There's not other venues where the Timberwolves don't have a basket song that doesn't, you'd play it freaking 50 times a game.
Right.
The Twins, they have their own song, and so do the Vikings.
Twins,
but they again, it's not the same thing.
Right.
It's not the same at all. So
I was gonna say that the Twins do play "Let's Go Crazy" after a home run, but until Miguel Sano came on the scene, you really didn't notice their home run song until he came along.
But if you're going to have a song that represents your team and therefore your state, you need to you need to go with that. You need to go with something local. We're certainly not throwing out a Bob Dylan song after a goal, as I'm sure you can maybe find one that'd be cool, but you got to go with that. That and like I mentioned, that song means so much to me because that was my hockey infancy in 1996. It's got history with the game. It's got history with the playoffs. That was a phenomenal playoffs. And there's a lot of memories made there, not just for me, but for a lot of people. I just think you need to stick with it. I think it's too perfect of a situation not to go with. Do you have anything else?
Well,
we could probably talk for hours, but
I'm just
I don't know if you could
on the Prince subject. I don't know. There's a lot of emotion this past weekend.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rightfully so, as Prince was just a global icon, not just a Minnesota icon, but it was very near and dear to all of us because he was one of us. He was the if you ever put anyone on a platform more than anyone else, it was Prince. Prince was #one of us.
He definitely was.
There's no other way to put it, and that's just kind of the way you feel coming out of this weekend. Let's have him as the gold song, and let's have him as this and this and this, and
yeah. I don't think that any measure.
Bites.
I don't think that any measure that they've done to honor him has been excessive.
Right.
Because he meant that much to this state. And the fact that, and I mentioned Bob Dylan earlier. Bob Dylan's, arguably the most famous musician to come out of Minnesota. And that's, you can certainly have a debate about that. But the difference is that Prince stayed here. Bob Dylan moved to New York very young. We're very proud of him still, obviously. But Prince made Minnesota a cool place to be. He made... he stayed here and he made it here, and he continued to make it here, and he became a global icon, recording music in freaking Chanhassen. That's I think what means a lot to a lot of people is that not only did he make it big and move out, he didn't do the typical escape from flyover country. He stuck around because he loved it here that much. You saw him. He would rent out suites for Vikings games. He made that Vikings song, which we don't have to dive into, but and he was very supportive of the basketball teams too. He's a big basketball fan. The guy was, he was our celebrity, and then I've heard that mentioned before, but it was so true because he stayed here. He was here all the time, even when he was in other places. Obviously, he had houses elsewhere because when you're rich, why wouldn't you? He still was rooted here, and that's what mattered to a lot of people, and it's very fitting that he died here as well. Obviously, that means a lot to a lot of people too, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's you hit it right on the nail there. He was very much one of us. He was proud to be one of us.
Yeah.
When he really took off, he continued to stay here, and he just continued to live his life as much as he could here in Minnesota. And everyone, much like they have a Joe Mauer story, everyone here has a Prince story. There's always somebody who has a Prince story, and
it's like having a Sid story.
It's just it really felt like on Friday it just should have been a holiday here in the state because Prince was just as much of a part of everyone, everything that Minnesota is. We should have just shut down for the rest of the day. And
I'm not opposed to it being like a somewhat observed day from here on out in the state, where it's like, maybe don't go as far as like making an official bank holiday or something like that. I don't know the hoops you have to jump through for that, but make it a day that Minnesota observes, basically. Like, make it a day that at the very least, you go home and you put an album on or something like that. Make it a day that you go out of your way to honor him and what he meant to not just the music community but the state, and the contributions that he made to the music in this state too.
Yeah.
So,
and that's what that's the open you heard here for the podcast was a very Prince open, and I'd been kind of sitting on that for a few days. So, it's sad, very sad that we lost Prince at such a young age, and obviously very, maybe.
Talk about bringing things to a screeching halt. Then they played Chelsea Dagger and Barbingo. At least they didn't start off with the chorus. Oh, there it is. Never mind. There's the chorus. Oh, hold on here.
If you have hate in your heart, let it out.
Let it out, Giles. Let the hate out.
I was in some kind of thought, but
you know what? I don't blame you for getting derailed by Chelsea Dagger. I think that's I think that's fair.
No,
it's one of your more excusable derailments, I gotta say. He's still derailed.
Wow. It's just, I guess I'll say, appreciate Prince for what he did, and that's it.
Yeah, no, it's well put. Alrighty, so same bat time, same bat channel next week. We'll see what we can do as far as getting together a fancy episode where we can kick off the off season, I suppose, as well as.
I think we're gonna try to get Tom Schreier on the next show, and we're gonna try to have a fancy call-in and vent episode.
Yeah,
as we've pushed off for now 2 weeks in a row. But we're gonna be here. At least through the free agency period, and then we'll see what happens. But continue to jump in and listen, and thank you for listening. And I kind of touched on this after the game, but it's been kind of nice to interact with all the people in person, who have listened to the show this season, and it's also been nice to just interact with people in person, not even knowing who listened to the show,
right.
But just meeting people on Wild Twitter has been fun for me, and obviously that's a good way to grow the show, but it's just a good way to just, I don't know, get out of the bubble, meet people. And
no, absolutely. And as much as a recluse as I am, which I definitely am, it really has been amazing. Like last season, I think the listenership was okay, but we didn't get a ton of feedback. We had a few listeners like, hey, great show. Why does it sound so crappy? But this year, even before we completely fixed the audio issues, we had a lot of people come forward and be like, hey, I listen to your show every week. It's great. And we're seeing a lot of downloads as soon as we upload the show, basically, which, we're appointment viewing for some of you, and I can't...
It's incredible.
I can't express enough. No, honestly, I can't express enough how much that means to us. Like that is just... it's literally amazing to Giles and I both, collectively, that people go out of their way to listen to what we have to say, and it does. It means a lot. I mean, we work very hard, making articles and educating ourselves on this team, and it does. It's kind of a work paying off kind of thing. It feels absolutely fantastic, and it's absolutely an honor that people take an hour plus of their week to listen to us banter half drunk about hockey jerseys. Or in Giles' case tonight, full drunk.
No, I'm not that drunk.
Mostly,
Don't worry.
kind of drunk.
It's not like 3 weeks ago when I was just full on blitz.
Well, it's not meltdown style where we lost you halfway through the podcast.
I loved what we've done this year, and we've kind of seen it in the listeners.
Yeah, thank you.
People have listened a little bit more, and I'm just trying to think more to the guests we've had on, and I'm just going to try and list them off the top of my head. So if I missed anyone, we've got old pal Charlie, we've got our friend Dan. God bless him. As much as he hates the Wild right now.
Which is understandable.
Tom Schreier, thanks for having us in your studio. Hello. Damn, we had Brian Reynolds, we had Taylor Kelly. Who else did we have?
We had the great Nate Wells on a couple of episodes.
We had Nate Wells for a couple
before and after college hockey season, of course. And then we had the Melton episode, which was the cavalcade of stars. We had Heather Rule.
That was John Marthaler. That was Heather Rule. That was Dan
again. Tom again.
That was Tom.
And the great John Bonus. Yes.
That was actually, we made fun of John on that show for him wanting to fire Mike Gill, but then like a week later we fired Mike Gill.
Yeah.
So, how about that?
Yeah. It's why he's the Godfather.
Yeah. It's been fun. I will say as such, and hopefully next year we grow a little more. We maybe bring a little more high profile guests onto the show, but it's been a good year for the podcast, and I don't know. It's just go big or go home. Next year. That's my stand.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Hopefully you don't stop listening after this episode. If you do, I guess I kind of understand. But
we're gonna have
a lot of stuff going on this summer too. So look forward to that. And also a break in August, because why not? But yeah, I don't know. They can probably wrap it up, huh?
Probably, unless you wanted to chime in anything on the NHL playoffs, which we have not talked about.
The one thing I will say is the only second round matchup we have set right now is Pens and Caps, and holy Christ, am I looking forward to that?
Oh man!
Oh my God!
Hold on to your butts.
You're very much an out of the closet Caps fan, and I've mentioned this before. I'm somewhat of a Penguins fan. I do, for the same reason as you, I do like the Caps, and I really do wish that they win, just for the simple sake that Ovechkin needs to get one so people can shut up.
Hold the phones. Could you imagine if, say, it was Game 3, Pens or Caps at Pens, and the Pens were wearing their home black and gold alternates, and the Pens decided to bring back the white throwbacks.
That would be just terrific.
From last year. Oh my God, I'd die.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah,
we can hope. We can dream.
Yeah.
What if they do what if they do color on color? Black
do a flyover for that.
Yeah.
Holy Christ. We'll be back.
Yeah.
We'll keep talking about the Wild. We'll probably
week.
have some good Wild segments, and we'll talk about the NHL playoffs as is, and we'll just bring you through the free agency period in early July, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But it's been fun, and again, thank you to everyone. And it's been a lot of fun, and I've enjoyed the time on the podcast, even though I'm easily distracted many times.
Our bar bingo.
I've enjoyed it, so thank you to everyone.
Yeah, I could probably wrap it up. So, if you haven't already, for some reason I don't understand, follow Giles on Twitter, Giles Farrell. Follow myself on Twitter at Ben Remington.
Tell your friends.
Yes, follow at Wild Extra and check out our articles at Wild Extra as we try to navigate through what should be a very interesting offseason for the Minnesota Wild, in addition to the rest of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So until next week, when we maybe fancy things up a bit, thank you for listening. Thank you for the download. Thank you for the entire season of your listening patronage and going forward with that as well. We will talk to you next week.
Bye!
St. Paul, Minnesota.
Minneapolis, Minnesota.
We are ducks, and ducks fly together.
Covers me. Can you, my darling, can you picture this cat courtyard? An ocean of violets in bloom.